For 20 years, she ended every show with 2 words: be kind.
The girl wasn't kind. That was the headline. Here's the problem. I'm a comedian who got a talk show, and I ended the show every day by saying, be kind to one another. Had I ended my show by saying, go yourselves.
Look at Oprah, how hard it is for her.
Oh, she's got, like 10 houses, Ellen DeGeneres?
But according to Rob Schneider, the kindness was a costume.
But she was said to be a nasty, and that's Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah.
So her show got canceled after she had this testy exchange with Dakota Johnson, where something happened where Dakota said, oh, I had this birthday party. And Ellen said, well, why didn't you invite me? You didn't invite me. And she said, like, no, I did invite you.
And Joe Rogan, he didn't hold back either.
Ellen is like an old, but it's a rough one now. It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. That's a rough one. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell, and in the back, there's people that are getting up on the rack like this.
But here's what almost nobody is talking about. Behind the dancing, behind the giveaways, there were young artists. Kids, some of them. And what they say happened inside Ellen's world is darker than anything Hollywood wanted you to see. One woman warned us about all of this years ago. Nobody listened. Tonight, you will. Ellen DeGeneres wasn't just a talk show host. She was an institution, 19 seasons, a fortune reportedly worth $450 million according to Forbes. A daytime empire built on a single, simple promise that she was the nicest person in Hollywood. Your mother watched her, your grandmother watched her, and in an industry full of scandals, Ellen felt safe. That trust made her powerful in a very specific way. Because Ellen had built a reputation as the woman who discovered talent, the host who could find a kid on YouTube and hand them the world overnight. Parents dreamed of their children landing on her stage. One appearance could change a family's life forever, which means young performers and the people who loved them trusted Ellen DeGeneres with everything. But according to Rob Schneider, a man who's been inside Hollywood for 4 decades, the image and the reality were never the same thing. And when he sat down with Megyn Kelly, he said the quiet part out loud.
Ellen, that's not what happened. And Ellen had blown her off and then tried to play the victim on the set with her. Anyway, it led to article after article of people being like, Ellen is a nasty person. And all these staffers started to come out, not for nothing, but I know a guy, I know him very well, whose sister worked for her, who said, you were not allowed to make eye contact with Ellen in the halls of that show. If you saw her, this is not a nice person. So she eventually got canceled.
No eye contact in the hallways of a show about kindness. Think about what that means. That's not a rule about privacy. That's not a rule about focus. Insiders have alleged it was a rule about hierarchy, about fear, about power. And if the adults inside that building were reportedly afraid to look her in the eye, what was happening to the kids? The first crack in the empire didn't come from an investigation. It came from a birthday party. It was not a sign of her ever making. Dakota Johnson sat across from Ellen in what was supposed to be a routine celebrity interview. Ellen joked that Dakota hadn't invited her to her birthday party. It was meant to be playful, light, the usual game, except Dakota didn't play. She looked at Ellen and calmly said the words that changed everything. Actually, I did invite you. That's not what happened. One guest, one sentence, and the mask reportedly slipped on live television. The clip exploded. And suddenly, people who had stayed silent for years started talking.
That's the right response.
Yeah.
She's got a Netflix special. And here's the capper. On the promo, and apparently there's now articles out about from people who have seen the preview. She plays the victim. And she says, poor me. And she actually has the nerve to say that she was run out of Hollywood. This person
with $100 million in her pocket.
400.
Article after article followed. Former staffers came forward, and then social media poured gasoline on the fire. One viral thread asked people to share their wildest Ellen stories, and thousands of replies flooded in. One claim came from a restaurant worker who says she served Ellen at brunch. A letter to the owner, over-chipped nail polish on a waitress's hand. Then there were the audience members, the everyday fans who worshipped her.
Totally different. She would only speak to the audience when the cameras were rolling. As soon as they turned the cameras off, she would not even acknowledge the audience. She would just sit on the couch, basically. Even when she exited, she just said what she had to say on camera and then walked off.
The cameras stop, and so does the kindness. Now, to be clear, not every viral story can be verified, but the sheer volume of similar claims from staffers, from guests, from strangers who'd never met each other, created a pattern that became impossible to ignore. Megyn Kelly's response to Ellen's comeback said it all.
How hard it is for her.
Oh, she's got, like 10 houses, Ellen DeGeneres?
Michelle Obama. Look how hard it is for women in America. They're hurting.
They're going to let her back in, Rob, because she's a lesbian, she's a leftist, and she didn't hit one of their sacred cows.
But here's the thing. Everything you've heard so far came from adults, people with careers, people with options, people who could walk away. The next story is different, because the next story is about a 12-year-old boy Ellen once called her greatest discovery. And it starts with a haircut. In 2010, a sixth grader from Oklahoma sat down at a piano during a school festival and performed Lady Gaga's Paparazzi. His name was Grayson Chance. The video hit YouTube and detonated. Millions of views in days. And in Hollywood, one person moved faster than everyone else. Ellen DeGeneres.
So inspired by one of the children who she had seen on YouTube, whom she had invited onto her show, named Grayson Chance.
She didn't just invite him on the show, she went further, much further.
She was so inspired by Grayson Chance, she started a record label that she named 1111. Grayson Chance was the first person signed to her. From the outside looking in, this looked like a match made in heaven.
An entire record label named 1111, built around one child. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. The most powerful woman in daytime television had personally chosen this boy. She was going to guide him, protect him, launch him. But according to Grayson himself, that's not what happened behind the scenes. Years later, he would describe his time with Ellen as nothing less than traumatic. He called her manipulative, opportunistic, and he revealed what insiders say she really saw when she looked at him. Not a child, a product. Her own Justin Bieber. The haircut, the YouTube discovery story, the young vocalist scouted before his voice had even changed. According to Grayson, Ellen believed she had found her cash cow, the next teen phenomenon, with her name stamped on the discovery. There was just one problem. Ellen reportedly had no idea how to actually manage a child's music career. No experience, no infrastructure, just control. And according to Grayson, that control reached into everything. His sound, his image, his schedule, even his family. Let that sink in. A grown woman, one of the most powerful people in entertainment, allegedly calling a child's mother to berate her because her son hadn't watched a Justin Bieber documentary fast enough. That's not infrastructure, but perfect and political and sensitive things for all. And then, the numbers dropped. Grayson's second album underperformed. Ticket sales slipped. And according to him, the woman who had promised to guide his entire career made a decision that would scar him for years. She vanished. No phone calls. No meetings. No goodbye. A teenager, signed to her label, promoted as her discovery, allegedly ghosted the moment he stopped being profitable. But a story doesn't end there. Because in 2019, Grayson returned to The Ellen Show, and what the audience saw looked like a heartwarming reunion. Ellen even praised him for coming out as gay 2 years earlier. Beautiful television. Except, according to Grayson, it was staged. She had nothing to do with that. They hadn't spoken in years, and yet there she was, on camera, playing the proud mentor for an audience that had no idea what he says really happened. When Grayson finally went public with everything, he didn't whisper it. He put it on TikTok for millions to see. What happened to me as a kid was not cool. Those are his words, not a tabloid's, not a rumor. The discovery himself, telling the world what the fairy tale actually cost. And here's the question that should keep you watching. If that's what allegedly happened to the child she claimed to love, what happened to the guest she didn't? 2 years before Grayson, same stage, same host. Mariah Carey sat across from Ellen carrying a secret she had every reason to protect. She was pregnant, but she hadn't announced it because Mariah had a history of miscarriage, and it was far too early. Any mother will tell you those first weeks are sacred, private, fragile. Ellen brought it up anyway, and when Mariah tried to shut it down, Ellen didn't stop. She turned it into a game On live television, she offered Mariah champagne, knowing that a refusal would confirm everything to millions of viewers. Watch Mariah's face in that moment, the discomfort, the trapped smile of a woman being cornered on national TV. And then, shortly after that interview, Mariah suffered a miscarriage. Mariah has spoken about that moment for years, in interviews and in her own memoir. The word she keeps returning to is uncomfortable. Commentators have used a stronger one. And she wasn't alone. Taylor Swift, young early in her career, got her own version of the treatment, a game where Ellen pressured her to identify men she'd dated, as Taylor grew visibly upset and repeatedly asked her to stop. Grayson, Mariah, Taylor, 3 different artists, 3 different years, the same alleged pattern, young talent cornered by power, on a stage built on the word kind. Now here's where this story bends back on itself. Because years before any of this went viral, one woman stood in front of cameras and told the world exactly how this industry treats its young artists. She wasn't polite about it, she wasn't careful. And for saying it, she was mocked, dismissed, and called crazy. Her name is Jaguar Wright. Powerful people become more and more depraved, and young artists get trampled in the process. Jaguar wasn't talking about one host or one show. She was describing a machine, an industry where power protects itself, where image is a weapon, and where the young and hopeful are raw material. She'd seen that world from the inside. When Jaguar said these things, the industry laughed at her. But now, listen to Grayson Chance. Listen to what Mariah wrote in her own book. Watch Taylor's face in that chair. Then listen to Jaguar again. She wasn't crazy. She was early. So how does someone become this? Rob Schneider offered an answer that almost nobody expected, because Rob knew Ellen before any of it. Before the show, before the fortune, and his answer isn't an excuse, it's a warning. Hollywood, according to Rob, hurt Ellen first, forced her to hide who she was, made her play roles that betrayed her own identity, and instead of healing from that wound, he suggests she held onto it. He saw the resentment forming decades ago, and in his telling, that resentment fermented until the woman who had once been powerless finally had all the power. And then, allegedly, she did to others what had been done to her. Joe Rogan sees the same thing from the outside. And what makes his take hit different is that he was never her employee, never had a bad interview, never had anything to gain. And in comedy circles, according to Tim Dillon, this was never even a secret. Afraid. Not uncomfortable, afraid. And Ellen's response to all of it? A Netflix comeback special, where the scandal became a punchline. But the people who were actually there weren't laughing. A producer who worked with her said it plainly. An atmosphere of fear. That's not a family. That's not a workplace. And Megyn Kelly's final verdict on the apology tour? Today, Ellen lives quietly overseas. She and Portia relocated to the UK in late 2024. And according to Deadline, Pixar is reportedly bringing her back as the voice of Dory, the forgetful fish whose famous advice is to just keep swimming, just move on, just forget. The question is whether the internet ever will. So here's what's left when the music stops. Rob Schneider saw it from the inside. Joe Rogan saw it from the outside. Grayson lived it as a child. Mariah carried it as a mother. And Jaguar Wright called all of it, years before anyone was ready to listen. Which leaves 2 questions. If the people with power were too afraid to speak for 2 decades, how many stories are still locked inside that building? And if Jaguar was right about this, what else was she right about? If you made it this far, you already know this channel doesn't look away. Subscribe, drop your take in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.